So welcome to Thrive Guide, week 4 now. Is this week 4?
Week 5.
Time flies when you're having fun. Thrive Guide, week 5. And so this week we are looking at a super important subject, though it's not one that a lot of people feel comfortable talking about. It's not one that maybe we want to talk about as much, but it is really important for us in our world today, especially as we see the rise of online media, the rise of those things being used. It's something that's affecting men. Or traditionally, men have been the ones who have been the target of it, but now more and more women are beginning to be the target of it as well, and that is pornography usage. So today we're looking at that issue and talking through it from a biblical perspective. Hope this is an encouragement to you. If this is something you struggle with or currently struggle with, we hope we can kind of bring some clarity to that. We won't be able to dive deep because of our time restraints. We have a lot of resources we can point you to help more in that. So our first question as we jump into this issue of pornography usage is this: why is porn so dangerous? People who use pornography or maybe advocates of pornography will say, well, it's just something you're watching. You're not engaging in the act physically with another person. And so it's not harming anybody. It's just you that's engaging in this act. So why is pornography so dangerous?
It changes you. It modifies your brain. MRI scans of the brain show that people that are in pornography have the same MRI profile that people that are addicted to heroin have. It is consuming, and it's one of those things that starts off so small but becomes this consuming passion, and it affects every relationship in life. It destroys everything. It destroys desire, motivation. It destroys marriage. 2 out of 3 lawyers will tell you that their cases for divorce, they have porn at the center of them. It is a destructive addiction that tears people out. This is what Ted Bundy came out of. This is the reason Ted Bundy did what he did. He started in porn and he just couldn't get enough porn. He eventually went to rape and then murder. It is a consumer.
Go ahead, Brian. I think you were going to say something.
Most of the stories of men that I've walked with tell the story of just the stair steps that got them to the place that they were in. And so when you ask the how, my experience has been that it's not a simple, they started at the age of 38 to just walk right in and start, but it was small seeds of what we would call sin that are often infectious in men, took men slowly into it to the place where often their wives are the ones who have called me and said, hey, will you go have lunch with my husband? And they don't tell me anything else. They often just leave it right at that. And in those conversations have led to multiple opportunities to hear the stories of how it happened. So my answer is it's a slow step process. It's often not straight into it. Sometimes it's seeing porn as a teenager or even a young teenager, and then that leads, or it's other addictive things that have led them to porn.
And the typical first view of porn is now at 11 years old because of the access. So that trend, because of it, since it is a trend, it's starting earlier and it's so accessible. So we have more years by the time they get to 35, 40, which is maximum usage of porn. It has done its toll for decades.
And it's, I think, going off that point, and there's some studies you look at would say even earlier. I've seen some studies that say we're getting closer to 8 or 9 years old now with the onset of technology usage. And the problem with that, the danger in that is that when children are growing up with that access, it normalizes the issue. Yeah. It normalizes the thing. My son is 6 years old. He'll be 7 in October. So statistically speaking, again, depending on which one you look at, in a few years, statistically speaking, he will have his first encounter with pornography. And so for me as a parent, I want to be prepared to handle that and to be able to deal with that in a proper way. But even looking at student ministry now with applications like Snapchat and other social media, the usage of this is just skyrocketed, and because it's being normalized, it does pose a huge danger, I think, to our society.
I think one of the dangers just too is, if you think about God's design for sex and sexuality, it just shows the brokenness of it. And we're taking something that's supposed to be beautiful, and it's supposed to glorify God, and we're sensationalizing it. And we're by the time, I think of conversations I've had with people, and it's when somebody's been so consumed by pornography that when they finally get married, that their sex life just isn't even fulfilling, because it just doesn't live up to the standards that porn has set for them. So it leads to an unfulfilling sex life, which causes problems in their marriage, which leads to divorce, as we said. So it's just like, and then that even just drives people back to it, as if they feel unfulfilled. If sex and marriage isn't fulfilling them, then that's only going to just drive them back to pornography within marriage, and just lead to that brokenness even more. So it's just, it takes something. Sex is a good thing. It's a gift that God has given us, but pornography kind of takes sex that's been made a good thing and kind of leads it to become a God thing. When it's not supposed to be a God, it's supposed to glorify God.
And unfortunately, it's very much a Christian thing.
Yeah.
54% of pastors admit to looking at pornography in the last week. 4 out of 5 men, as high as 85%, I've heard, admit when polled that they've looked at pornography in the last week. And now it's 30% of women. So it is a prevalent problem. Among Christian circles, it's a problem. So we shouldn't think that just because we're Christians that the men in our circles and even the women are not struggling with this. They are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you guys have shared well the reasons it's dangerous. And so we want to move on to the next stage. So if you're struggling with pornography, if you're watching this video right now and you're struggling with it, and you feel like you cannot get away from it, we want to encourage you that this is not a rubber stamp on failure for you, right? It's not that you cannot have victory in this area of your life. And so we want to shift to that. And Mike even mentioned earlier, before we go to that question, how it changes the brain chemistry. But there's also proof that once you begin to pull back from that porn usage and you stop using pornography, your brain chemistry or those MRIs can change back to what they were previously. So we know there can be some victory from that. So that's really our second question we're gonna go to is, how does someone find victory over pornography? What are the steps they can take? What are some things they can do to really begin to live and walk in that victory?
I think the good thing about this is there are a lot of people have been down this road and have gotten out of it, found that freedom or victory, whatever you want to call it, as much as an addict gets freedom. But they have now this ministry of helping others. So they're a great resource. Focus on the Family has great resources on this. Triple X Church has great resources on this. There's things like Resolve, which is a accountability tool you can put on your phone. But there's also net nannies for filters on your computer. There's all of these things out there. But the key to this is passion. You've got to want it bad. You got to want to get out. When Jesus talked about this subject, this virtual adultery is really what it is. He says, if your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. And if your right hand causes you to sin, and I think he's talking about pornography, lust. Right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. And he's not asking us to literally maim ourselves, but he's saying you've got to be serious about this. You've got to really want it bad and do whatever it takes to break the cycle, which means telling people, revealing it, which is hard, and the shame, but getting a team together that helps you. It's thinking long haul. It's not going to be a sprint, thinking marathon. And it's the gospel. You need the gospel. You need God in this. It's prayer, and it's leaning in his power. But there is a way out, and there's people that have been down this road. And so this is the time to really get help and do whatever it takes to get out.
I think extraordinary measures, I think is very, very important. If people think, oh, small baby steps, like it's really easy to slide back into it. And so I think taking those extraordinary measures, gouging the eye, cutting the hand. I had a friend who he used one of those like online filter apps that kind of, did your thing. And he had like 3 or 4 friends who each got a list each week of kind of some flagged websites or whatnot. And if any of those flagged websites came up to be a pornographic website, my friend was going to have to write each of his friends a $1,000 check. So it was like they had this deal together where it's like, all right, if any of us, we each are going to see what the other people are looking at, and if any of us look at porn, it's going to cost us about $5,000. So it's just like,
wow.
Nobody wants to have to write that $5,000. So,
that is accountability.
It's ordinary, but it's effective. So
that's true. And the ones that I know that, because I've had many conversations as pastors, the ones that I know are the ones that are not extreme with it. They do treat it as a minor thing rather than a radical, man, I got to get this out of my life. Whatever I have to do, I got to do it. They just don't succeed. They keep coming back and they get in this cycle and they feel guilty and they have the shame and they fall into it again. And then they feel like dirt again. And it's because they're not willing to do whatever it takes to break the pattern.
Mm-hmm. Jonathan, one of the paths has been the restoring of how a man sees a woman. Is one of those places that many men have to go back and work hard to restore how God wants us to see either the female in our life or females in general. Often it's females in general. And often that is the kind of the core issue that's going on deep inside of us, is the disrespect or the not being able to see them as the creation of the Creator. And so one thing I would say for a man is to ask that question about ourselves. How do I see my wife, my daughters, someone that I work? How do I view in my heart that person? And while all those other things are important, and we're working kind of with the mechanisms that get you out, it's really got to come all the way back down to the retraining of the heart, which then will hopefully retrain the eye to see each person differently, not just women in some ways, see everyone as God's asked us to see them as his creation.
Yeah, good point.
I think ultimately too, it's a gospel problem. It's what are we finding fulfillment in? What are we finding like where's our hope? Where's our source of joy? And if we're not if we're not fully secure, fully fulfilled in Christ, then we're going to seek it in other things. And porn's a really easy one to kind of find that sense of fulfillment in.
Yeah.
So if we're not full in Christ, then we're going to seek that fullness somewhere else. And it's really easy to just pull out your phone and, in a matter of seconds, you're thinking you're being full and you're not, though. It's just making yourself more empty.
Yeah, I agree. The men I have counseled in this, the students I've counseled in this, and again, I'm not saying this is across the board, but in my experience, often these men are not spending time in prayer. They're not spending time in the Word. They're not spending time growing in community, and they're doing this in isolation. So when they do that in isolation, then they can again normalize it and kind of not see it as serious as it is. I think Brian made a good point as well. We when we watch pornography, those that do, because of we're so media infused in our culture, it becomes this game or this show or this fantasy that's not reality, where, as Brian said, the reality is that is someone's mother or sister or daughter or whatever the case may be involved in that act. And those are real people doing that. And many times although they say they're doing it of their own volition, there are other factors in their life that they feel is forcing them or necessitating that they participate in that. So we need to be intentional with those things and realize that. And I think also, I'll just say one final thought, and I'll turn it over to you guys if you have any other thoughts. Realizing that if we're trying to achieve victory and freedom from this, realizing for you what it is that's leading you to that. What desire in your heart? Is it loneliness? Is it anxiety? Is it an emptiness? And also, what are the factors? Is it when you're alone? Is it a certain time? Is it after a certain time? Whatever the case may be, and trying to eliminate those factors as much as possible will help with some of those mechanics of keeping yourselves away from that. If you're an alcoholic, if you struggle with alcohol, we would encourage you not to go to a bar, and possibly not even go to any place that serves alcohol if you have an extreme issue with it. And so the same thing for those who are struggling with pornography, you need to get yourself out of those situations that are going to lend you to succumbing to that struggle. So any final thoughts as we close this week's Thrive Guide? Any final thoughts you guys want to share?
Yes.
I would say be really, really careful and cautious as parents and as men. There's an industry out there that's predatory, that's going after you and will go to any lengths to get you to look at this stuff. Mm-hmm. And you just need to be mindful that this is a battle, this is warfare, and you've got to treat it likewise, because they're going to do everything to draw you into that business, that $15 billion industry where they're making tons of money. So just be aware that you are being targeted, and act likewise.
And I would say, I'm not going to mention the names. I don't want to give them any publicity at all, but I believe they're the largest online platform for pornography, has recently offered a free membership to their website during this COVID-19, because they realize people are at home and they're trying to capitalize on that. Yeah. So they are definitely going to try to do that. Go ahead, Brian. You have something you want to share?
Just one step. Sometimes some of this is connected to the chemistry inside of a man. And so bringing your doctor into it is an important step. There are tests that they can do that will determine certain things that you can work with your doctor to either increase or decrease. And so as a holistic look of it, if you're really serious, I would bring your doctor into it. Now, your doctor may be addicted himself, and you have to be careful in that step, but you're asking him as a medical professional to help you. I think that's one of those steps of being courageous and taking it serious. That it's not just, I can do all these other things, but that actually I need help in getting out.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I would just say kind of like with that too, don't take this on by yourself. This is not something, you're in porn in isolation. Don't try to get out of it in isolation as well. So bring community into it. Find some guys that you can, help keep you accountable. Maybe you need to confess to your wife, or there might be somebody that you really need to confess this sin to. That's difficult. I've been there myself, having to do that, but it's the first step to really be try to find freedom in this.
Yep.
So find community, find accountability, use resources. There's Mike's mentioned a few. There are a lot more others out there. There are books, filters, apps, whatever you have it. So just don't try to do it by yourself.
And I would say confidently that if you're watching this video and you are trying to do it by yourself and you feel just embarrassment or shame, please reach out to us. That you're not going to get any shame from us. We want to encourage you. We want to be there to help you and walk alongside you. So you can go on our website, lifespringdurham.com. You have all our contact information there. Feel free to contact one of us. We'll keep it in confidence. But we do want to be there for you. We want to help you walk through that and pray with you through that. So thank you all so much for joining us this week for our Thrive Guide. Be on the lookout. We're going to be switching the way the format of this and the way we do this going forward. So be on the lookout on our social media pages to see how we're going to do that. We're always trying to reimagine and make sure that we're giving you the best content possible in the best way possible. So we'll have more information.
Right. Changing.
That's right. That's exactly right. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you online soon.